Bonjour à tous.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being so many of you here. We're just taking advantage today of the General Assembly of the EFFS, which is the European Federation of Funeral Services, welcomed by CPM, which is the host for this year. And we've taken advantage of this situation to ask our friends and colleagues from other European countries to tell us how funeral business happens in their countries. And we asked them questions. And today there are 19 countries from France represented here. And we asked questions about three particular subjects. The first was what happens in your country, what's happening in terms of regulation. And I can now tell you straight away that France is very easily the country with the most regulations, but there are countries where there's almost no regulations. The second question concerned what's happening in terms of practices. And the third point was, if you could imagine, think of the trends invisible for the future, what trends would this be? Thanks to all the French people.
Thanks all the European members, friends. Thank you for your collaboration. Thank you for being here. I want to address special thanks to Guillaume and the board who helped all of us to organize this point. Now I finished. Donc merci à tous. Je vous souhaite une bonne conférence et à tout à l'heure.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard. Sorry for the public audience, but you have your translation. I will not speak French today. I will speak English because the language of EFFS is English. Okay. Just a quick presentation of EFFS. EFFS, it's the European Federation Funeral Services. It's been created in the 1996 by two major organizations at that time. Now it's taking place. There's only one organization for private and public sector in the funeral business. We have almost the country except England, who have left a few years ago. They have done their Brexit before the official one, but otherwise England, we have all the major countries in Europe. We're gonna give you a little bit overview of our business in Europe. We have made a survey, as mentioned Richard, and we will give you the highlights to this survey. So, as I mentioned, the European Federation, so we have about 100 members in 29 countries. And we have a lot of things to do, but we have achieved something that we are very proud of. It's a standard. We were the first service standard in Europe, and it was the funeral services. It was launched in 2005, and we revised this standard in 2015, and it was published a few weeks ago on the 1st November. A standard is very important, so it's not above the regulation, but it means a European standard will be above the national standard, and it's something very important in our business. Is to have to share some common practice. So we have the map with the country have been replied to our survey. So let's talk about regulation. A good example that in France that we've been talking about already some couple of years is death certificate. So in France it will be implemented in normally next year, but in some other countries like my friend from Portugal, is being implemented already for a few years. So it gives you the diversity that we're talking about. Something like is very important, digitalization. And there is some countries that they are very advanced, and some who are even not thinking about this problem of death certificate in terms of digital. Let's say that in some countries, we know that, for example, in France, we have 6 days to conduct a funeral. In some countries, like Sweden, we have a month to conduct a funeral. So to give you that some place it's different, of course. Sorry. Regarding our profession, the regulation, there is 7 countries that you have no regulation regarding the profession. So you can open a funeral shop without anything. Just you will have a telephone, and you hire personnel, you hire vehicles, no regulation. As Richard mentioned, we have really strong regulation in France, but there is also some country of you have something, and specific country regarding training, like Austria, Belgium, Hungary, Italy, Portugal, or France, who it's a requirement to get their personal trainer. After, of course, there is also some training, like the big federation, like Germany and Norway, for example. They have setups of such a very nice training for at least several months of some years sometimes. So it gives you the diversity of Europe. Regarding cemeteries, more or less in Europe it's about the same. It's managed by local authority, but you have some exception. And the biggest exception is Netherlands, or you have churches, private firms, foundations who are managed cemeteries. There's also some other country for the north of Europe, where is also you can involve some church who are involved in the management of cemeteries. Coffin regulations. We have some, more or less, all the countries, they have a regulation regarding coffin, instead that we have to provide a coffin to make a burial or a cremation. Belgium and Netherlands, they mention also that it's not only coffin, but it can be a shroud as well. So the envelope, like for example for the Muslim, they don't have to use a coffin. The regulation for crematoria, we can find in Europe. The management will be both managed by the local authority or by private. It's only Norway and Sweden who it's only managed by the local authority or the church. Regarding the funeral home, this something is very booming. There is everywhere in Europe, everywhere. Our colleague from Italy said there are about 7,000. In Germany, 5,000. In France, it's 3,000. In Austria, 1,000. Every funeral director, one is funeral home, and I think it's a good thing because we need to provide good services for the family, and it's something that it's more and more focusing. It's not the simple funeral home with only a viewing room, but you have now, you can see in the pictures, a ceremony and so on and so on. Regulation regarding thanatopraxy. So there's something that everybody using thanatopraxy After, let's say that is France and UK who is using for something like 50% of the cases. Regarding the other countries, they are using thanatopraxy more or less for repatriation, and sometimes also because of, like, for example, my two colleagues from Portugal and Spain. In Portugal, they make a burial or cremation in 24 hours. In Spain, it will be 48 hours. So, of course, you don't need that much. It's difficult to sell this kind of product, thanatopraxy. The only comment, it's our friends from Romania. They have a regulation since 2016. It's mandatory to have thanatopraxy. Let's talk about now practice. Sorry, I was a little bit, yeah, the cost. So the cost, you have, let's say, 3 categories of country in Europe. You have the average one, who there is the cost of the funeral will be between 3,000 to 5,000. You have another category with the range is very high, huge, between 1,500 to 600,000. And you have also the country less than 2,000, with Portugal, Romania, Poland, and Hungary. Regarding the practice of cremation, there is 7 countries in Europe who are making more than 50% of the total of funerals as a cremation. And there is 2 countries, as I mentioned, Sweden and Switzerland, 82 to 90% of cremation. And for Romania, it's less than 10%, and either, we can explain that more the country is still Catholic and Orthodox, less the practice. There is less practice because of the religion. Regarding the practice of ceremonies, almost all the country will take care of religious and non-religious ceremony. So the funeral director will be with the family. Of course, we, as a funeral, we don't interfere with religion, but we coordinate a religious ceremony. I noticed we have 2 exceptions, Norway and Romania. Practice catering. So let's say that it's something that we have something in common, I think, in Europe. It's to host a meal after the funeral. But with the modern society nowadays, it was disappear, and it's coming back again. Coming back again sometimes by funeral operators. And you will see with the example of Romania, where it's the funeral company who provide this kind of service. Some other countries is more or less, it will be, sometimes we will help, but sometimes we will say, well, okay, you have go to see a catering person to do it. Regarding the practice support, and practice supports mean how we help family regarding psychological support. Let's say that most of the company, they don't have in intern, they outsource this service. In some country like Portugal, I don't think that you can operate this kind of system. You have to. It's not possible. Regarding the practice administrative procedures, let's say that most of the European countries propose to the family to help them to deal with all the paperwork after the death, except Sweden, where the funeral directors will offer support of the setting the estate, last will, So it's really unique in Europe. And normally, when we, most of the country in Europe, we will ask the family if something regarding the will, they will go to the solicitor or they go to a lawyer, but we cannot do it. But in Sweden, it's allowed. Practice digital service. Well, we see in our survey that very few companies provide this kind of service. It's something that everybody is thinking, but not really provide in a matter of quantity. But there is some experience, for example, like civil ceremony, or you will have the possibility to have an access to view the ceremony by internet. You will have also the possibility to get to record this ceremony. So these kind of things starting, but there is, and I'm sure you will explain, and we will give you of course, to talk about it, about the experience, because I think it's important that we are here also to share experience. However, I think the development of digital and artificial intelligence will profoundly change the future of our working environment. I don't know when, I don't know why, I don't know when, but it will come. You will see around us all the business have been touched by this technology. Regarding practice digital formalities, let's say that every country have starting something, not at the same speed. We have been talking in the previous regarding the dev certificate. So it will also depend on the strategy of our politics, national or local. There is many countries who are also managed at a regional level. And we see that, for example, Sweden and Norway, they are really in advance because of the will of the public authority. Practice and alternatives. Let's be clear, today there is only two practices in Europe, burial and cremation. There is things that you probably heard regarding resumation. The French Quebecian they call aquamation. This is not allowed in Europe. We know by our friend from the Netherlands that they make some study about this technology, but it hasn't been legalized yet. So at the moment we talk, even in France, we've been talking about this practice, but it's not legalized yet. So for the people who are not aware about what is resumation or aquamation, the body is placed in a pressure vessel that is then filled with mixture of water and potassium hydroxide. So this practice is being used in Canada and in some 70 states in the US. Some other practice that you've been probably heard, it's humusisation en français, or human composting. And something very recently, you probably heard, it's in USA, in the Washington states, become the first states to allow human composting as a burial method. So what is human composting? The concept is to place the compost body between layers of food and leaves. After 1 year, the diseased relatives can recover this super compost to fertilize a tree shoot. It's really something that we will call ecological burial. I know that also an experience is conducted in Belgium, in the province of Wallonia, with animals, with pigs. Another practice or alternatives that you probably heard, it's cryonics. Cryonics is a technique intended to hopefully save lives in greatly extend lifespan. It exists so in the US, in some states in Canada. And so you have to have a special process because you're running out of time, so you have really put to a body in certain condition. And you go to the center, I think it's in Detroit, and that to preserve the body. And one day, if we have the solution, it's to come back to death, these people. And the last one is, you probably heard, is promation. Promation is a concept which has been developed in Sweden in 1997. So they set up a company, but never success. They have, you can see on internet, you will see, they will explain everything around. Yeah? Well, it's perhaps, but you perhaps know, but in terms of technology, it was not coming out as a production. It's perhaps succeed in a test, but never succeed as a professional way in terms of industrialization. Yeah, it's interesting, but at the moment, and our friend from Sweden perhaps will confirm us, but at the moment, nothing happened. But perhaps in 10 years, yeah. What is your future? Yeah. Yeah, yeah, but she's been with the process already 15 years, and nothing is coming out. Well, okay. Thank you for your... what is your future? Well, so when we ask this for our 14 countries, there is things coming in mind, something that we can say that Europe countries, they said, well, we need more professionalization. We need something more personalized in terms of ceremony, more transparency. We know that pre-needs is something that is gonna also booming, increase of cremation, online services. Also, we know, I told you about that the digital is coming, but something we should be combined with human. I think also, even if the digital will come in our business, we still need human. I think we will also, in near future, we will be more focusing, and I think the family will talk about more ecological products, training and quality level improvement, and so on. At that stage, before I leave if you have any question, we are here on stage, but also there is my colleagues over in this room. If you have something or also some testimony regarding regulation or regarding practices, please, welcome to share. Otherwise, we'll start by the next presentation. Yes, can
Okay, hello, I'm from Germany. I have some questions for our partners here in Europe. We have in Germany, for the online funeral service, I think about this one, that this online funeral service make the market go down. Because in Germany, we have two big companies who make advertisement on internet. All funeral homes can offer the prices there. I also was there for 2 years ago, but I think it's not the right way, so I get out of the service. Is it also in other countries the same one? Because the prices are down complete for the complete funeral service up to 900 euro complete in Germany. If you have the same one in Spain or Portugal or France or so.
Let's say that in France we have one player, a pure digital player.
Yeah.
He's just starting 2 years ago. He makes some advertising quite pushy, and it's regarding price.
Yeah.
And of course, he needs some funeral people to conduct this because he don't have any things. He have only.
Sure. No,
So-
that's, I understand that are only a digital firm who makes offers to every funeral homes that they can make advertisement there, and the people who look in the internet and searching for a funeral, they choose mostly the cheapest one. So there are some funeral homes who make completely, including cremation, everything. It's for 680 euro. So,
Thank you. Please.
Hi.
Hi.
If I could answer
Thank you.
that on from the experience and the discussions that we've had during the course of the last 4 years with regard to developments on the EN 15017. Basically, in every country, you will find a couple of online providers. And most of them, I think we're all in agreement, we're not going to get rid of them. It's going to be a part of our business, I think, for the future. But we also notice that it is very, very few. What we notice more of is that the traditional funeral homes and funeral directors or funeral companies, they are offering, in addition to the traditional classical face-to-face sessions that they have with the families, they are offering online services on top as a bonus. So you can choose certain things online. You can put things together online like we like to do, most of us. But the traditional 100% online broker is quite few.
okay, thank you.
And we think it's going to stay that way because the consumer is not.
Yeah, I know I do the business for 3 years ago. I get 150 up to 200 funerals a year on this way. But I think you don't know your customers. And I think it's very important you know your customers. I canceled the service for 2 years ago because I think that can be the right way. Everything is broken in the funeral business.
Yes, and to avoid, I think in all countries we have the experience because people can open a funeral company without having, or a funeral home, without having a lot of qualification. We will always notice this type of thing. But at the same time, we also notice that many countries work with quality
Agreements.
Siegel. I can't think of the English word. The quality stamps, so that you can recognize a funeral home that is working to a standard, which our business deserves.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bonjour.
Hi there, I'm Sarah Dumont. I'm not a funeral operator, I'm a journalist, and I've created a site called apn.life, which talks about the end of life and death in a positive way, and I've just published a book, a practical guide on civil ceremonies. People are often surprised about my passion for this subject and can sometimes have feel that this is kind of mourning that isn't properly resolved. And I can perhaps talk about my experience, which is very different, in fact, because actually for the burial of my father, who wanted to be cremated, but we didn't want to go to a crematorium that day, and so we managed to meet an undertaker who was willing to listen to our expectations and what we wanted, and they let us organize this in a concert room in Paris, a concert hall in Paris, and the coffin of my father was there, and there were homages and honor. He was honored during that time, and I heard people applauding. I've never heard that before at a funeral. And I realized that if people were applauding, it was because they felt they were authorized not to be in a kind of attitude of sadness. And actually, they were allowed to be themselves and to honor the memory of my father and not just be there to cry. So his coffin was then covered in multicolored post-its on which everyone had written something. And he went to the crematorium all on his own. And we stayed and we had a drink and we had some food to eat. And I didn't realize it straight away, but this actually was great for me, a great experience, and it really helped me. And just a few months later, I thought I need to be able to say this to other people. And that's why I created this website, to communicate this message and to give keys to other people so that they could help them to be players on that day in their lives. I think that funerals like this are only going to increase because there's less and less people involved in religion. We know a third of ceremonies are non-religious ceremonies in France, and 40% of people in France opt for cremation. So these options, these choices are changing and being developed. Sorry, I've been forgetting to move on the slides. Thank you for reminding me. So, of course, families are faced with a symbolic gap which we need to fill in some way. They want to know what should we do, what should be the ritual that we should associate with this, and how can we honor the dead and remember them. Of course, we need to reinvent rites in order to fill this gap. And we can see that families, even if they want secular ceremonies, they want a personalized ceremony, which is like the person, which honors the person. And 70% of people who have been involved in the celebration of the funeral, it helps them with their mourning. So I think the results of this shows that funeral operators are going to have a new mission. They're going to have to put themselves in a role of supporters. They need to take on specific demands, specific requests, and that's going to take time. I know that funeral operators are very busy. I think digitalization and artificial intelligence will help in terms of freeing up from administrative tasks so that they have more time and availability to listen to families and to make something more customized, more personal, and to allow them to be kind of like funeral coaches. That will be more their role. I think that will also involve new places that might not just be dedicated to death, which are not just about our kind of austere environment. I think people in the future are not necessarily going to want to go to a crematorium for their funeral or to a cemetery. I think it will also involve local authorities. Secular authorities are working in this. In Nantes, for example, there are 16 municipalities who are providing these kind of services for less than 100 euros to families. It's up to funeral operators to go and see their municipalities and to talk to them so that rooms could be made available for families. And we might be able to do that like in Canada, maybe in golf courses, maybe in a sailing area, yacht area, or a theatre, or a concert hall. I think that future burials could take place in places of life and places where we live. I think also that there needs to be a creativity. We need to be able to take into account different specific requests. So I've got a photo here of a flower mandala from an Indian and Tibetan culture. It's a very simple thing. It's really simple. It doesn't cost anything. We just take dead leaves and chestnuts from around us, and it allows people to come together and experience something as a last homage to the dead. And I think all of this can come from communication between funeral operators. We need to create perhaps kind of laboratories for experimenting. We get inspired by other cultures. We exchange about practices. We test. I was part of a lab day where we really experienced this thing together, and we went through a number of sort of gestures and rites in terms of honoring the dead. I think we need to exchange ideas as much as possible so that we can create new things. I think there are also professions that are going to arise, that are going to emerge. I think at the moment it's just very small, but I really believe this is important. I'm meeting more and more secular officials for ceremonies who are working on secular marriages, secular baptisms, and they're also thinking about getting into funerals. They often have experience. Maybe they have other capacities. Maybe they are lyrical singers. Maybe they're also actors or authors. So they often have resources that can help to create these kind of ceremonies. And what they're trying to do is to bring like something extra to the soul and bring meaning to this time. And they're often involved in writing a speech, a kind of a funeral homily. I know one, for example, who will go and talk to 7 people from the dead person's family in order to write their homily. And of course, the difficulty that these people meet is that they are independent. Funeral companies see them as competitors to their master of ceremonies. But actually, I don't think all master of ceremonies really have the time to do this, where families want something really personalized. And the other challenge they have is that families are don't tend to have the same kind of money available for burial as they do for weddings. So they charge generally between 800 and 1,200 euros, when actually they spend lots of time. They really need to prove their worth. These are people who have supported weddings and created a connection with a family, and then they're going to be asked for funerals later on. And I think undertakers will be asked to connect to these people later on. Another profession I want to talk about is the funeral planner, where you have like tailored funerals. This is a premium service. These people come to your home as soon as the death is announced. They come to your home even on Saturday, on Sunday, and they're present. They're with the family virtually throughout the week before the ceremony. They're not going to just organize the funeral, but they're going to organize everything around it. Maybe the meal afterwards, maybe there'll be a live music group, they're going to book that, maybe book the hairdressers for the day of the funeral. Of course, this is a very sort of service for famous people, for people with money. But I think this is something that will become more and more known and more popular as people know about it. The goal is to really help the family to be at peace and to have ideas and to tell them that anything is possible. There's no limits in terms of the funeral. This costs obviously a great deal of money just for organizing the funeral. I'm not talking about the other services, but just for the funeral, we're looking at between 6,500 and 30,000 euros just for the planning. So this person who does this, I know in Paris, used to be an undertaker. They closed the undertakers, and she went for this idea 3 years ago, went to see an undertaker. What do you think about this idea, the funeral group? And they said, no, that's a ridiculous idea. But 3 years later, she's just been developed it, and now she works in partnership with a group that works on the whole logistics and the whole fleet of hearses for different undertakers. And this means that they can work on the whole sort of service aspect. And this funeral planner now has a partnership with this funeral operator, and she's now starting a training service for an undertaker group that believes in this project and believes that this is something to develop as a profession. And then finally, I just want to talk to you about something which is a bit more in the kind of English-speaking world, who approach death perhaps a little bit less austerely than we do, perhaps, and they have kind of fun rules. So goodbye parties, which are organized. They organize it when people are still living. So the first image that you see there on the invitation, this is somebody who launched this because she had a daughter of 16 years old who had leukemia, who dreamed about being a star, and before she died, they had an amazing party with hairdressers, and a photographer came, and there was just a brilliant evening all together, and she wanted to offer this service to other people. And this is also a way, in terms of what she explains, is a way also of bringing peace to those people who are in the family, so that they can be involved right to the very end, not there waiting, wondering whether she wants to be buried, whether she wants to be cremated. But this actually goes on while the person is alive. And then the two person you see underneath are two men who created Flower Power Funerals. You can see their hearse there next to them, and it gives you a bit of an idea of what they do. They're trying to respond to the demand of one English person in 10 who wants a non-traditional funeral service. So this is really like a goodbye party. We smile because it's happened. It doesn't mean that there isn't crying, but there's like a celebration and a joy. So that's the end.
Thank you very much. I think it was now it will be our friend from Romania. I think it's very interesting that you see, and I think everybody like as an entrepreneur or funeral directors, we have to reinvent our job. You know, if we do the same like we've done every day, we will die. You want to say something? Yeah, the microphone.
So me again, sorry.
No, it's.
So I think Mrs. Dubont has totally right, but the problem is they must change the rules for every country, because you know, or somebody knows it of you, we make repatriations without a sink coffin with our product. It is perfectly, but nobody exists here, also in France. So also I see a firm here who makes funeral by drones. I get it in Spain because we have a funeral home in Mallorca. I work with the EFM together. I think Mr. Viñas knows it. I have the idea for 5 years ago, but nobody responds on this. That is the problem. Here are many customers. I think they have very good ideas for funerals for the futures, but nobody changed the rules. That's the problem, I think. And that we must change all together. We must work all together on this problem.
Okay, thank you very much for that comment. One of the main goals of the EFFS is to work exactly on this situation. Every single country does have their own regulations. Even within the country, the different counties or provinces or cantons or whatever also have their own regulations. And sometimes it, of course, makes things difficult to be innovative, to be quick, to be effective, and so on. So this is a project that the EFFS is working on at European level to try to simplify and make things more effective across the European countries, across the borders. And it's an ongoing project. It's a long one. We're very optimistic that we will change things for the better step by step.
Yeah, I work at my problem for the future in Germany. I work on my problem since 10 years ago. Nothing had happens.
It's a very, very
most
long
of the
process.
funerals use our Ferropack foil, but no law, nothing has changed. So that's the reason. Mr. Dirk van Feur is also here.
Yes, it's a very, very long process.
Yeah, and the IATA improves the product. That's the problem also. But
Politics,
also in France,
all politics, all administration, they are really concerned when there's their relatives.
yes.
And that's a shame because, of course, we know, because we are working in this job for every day, that everybody will be concerned one day. But we have to deal with that. And I heard what you're saying. And we need also resources. We need, because it's also politics. Well, we are, as Anke mentioned, there is a new parliament, new European Parliament. There is a new commission. So we have to start again.
But they don't do anything. You know the problem. I work with Anubis again together. So in France, we have the big problem. Okay, we must hurry up. Okay.
We have to start again.
So. Okay, thanks.
Katalin, please.
Sorry, I cut, but we must go on,
Hello, everybody. I'm Catalin Dodu from Romania, and for the last 6 years, I'm a member in EFFS. I came here today to show you some perspectives and some facts about funeral services in Romania. When I talk with my colleagues, I know that in different countries there are regulations for funeral directors. In Romania there aren't. So what I will present you now, it will be considered a fun fact for most of you, because in the end I have a short movie and you'll see it. But for the beginning, I have to present you some notice about Romania. Maybe you know it, maybe you don't. We have 22 million peoples, but most of 4 million peoples are outside borders. Many of them here in France too, in Paris, and also. You also have in the pictures shown some of the beauties from Romania. Maybe you heard about Transfăgărășan, the best road in the world, and the Danube Delta, one of the greatest deltas in the world. Funeral home and services in Romania. There are a few, and the sector is growing. We have now regulation, we have a law which is strong, and we have to deal with that. Normally, a funeral home in Romania consists in a funeral store, general store, yeah, including coffins and so on, chapels, yeah, embalming sector, which could be external, but now we have a law who only permitted internal, yeah, and the fact that I will present you next, the Remembrance Room. It's a strange fact for many of you. Maybe you know it, maybe you don't, but after some slides I will come back to this type of services we provided. So, as a provided services, as in your country, there's nothing different. There's transport and funeral goods selling, yeah? This is a deposit at the chapels, embalming, and catering. What you have in the pictures is my funeral home. As you see it, it consists in a funeral store, which is large, in the right side of the picture, then 3 chapels, and on the left side of the picture I have this Remembrance Room. Let's talk about profit rates in Romania for funeral sector. As you see it, sales and funeral goods, it's 10–50% more or less. Then embalming, it's an important sector. Funeral transport, as in your country, it's a quarter. And as you see a great piece of pie, they say catering. Let's see what it means. So, we are a very orthodox country. 86% of the people are Orthodox. Rest, Catholic and other religion. In the Orthodox religion, death means the separation between soul, spirit, and body, material. As I quoted from the Bible, and the body goes to earth and the spirit goes to God. So, it's very important for the family that after burial, to make the transition from material life to immortality more easy for the deceased. So this is the reason that to make this transition easy and ask God to forgive the sins of the deceased, people offer commemoration meals. It's like giving something for free that the soul could be accepted in heaven. That's the explanation. it's an ancient tradition, it's an old tradition, but in Romania it's very, very strong, and it's very, very common. Every funeral have after burial this catering tradition. The word who said everything, it's charity, or caridad, or caridade in different language, it's kind of the same. In Romania, it's caritate. So it's the same in the Latin world, yeah? It's kind of the same word. The word is charity. But this word, this charity word, doesn't mean what it really happened on this remembrance room, on this commemoration meal. As I said before, people have to give something for free, that the spirit, the soul, to be accepted. Usually, this catering are held every after burial. Every after burial, it's followed by this catering, and then consists in 30, 40 people, and so on. So, as you see, immediately after the burial, after 40 days, when it's considered in our religion that the soul goes to God, after 6 months, after every 1 year till 7 years from death. So it's important to us, as a funeral director, to have these catering issues, this table of remembrance, this kind of room to give, because, as you see it before, 50% of the profit comes from us, to us, as funeral director for this catering, this meal. This meal is usually composed of 3 dishes. So, as said before, I'll show you some pictures.
Yes, please.
It consists in 3 dishes: the appetizer, the second dish, it's a Romanian traditional sarmalit, call it, and the third dish always chicken with rice. Every after burial, every meat after burial consists in that type of meat of dish. So every time after burial, the other ones, no. But the first meat after the burial, it's like this. I don't know. Sorry, I only present mine because I know it better. No, the second one and the other ones could be different, but the first one is...
If you can conclude.
Okay.
Sorry to...
Okay. I will show you at the end a short movie.
Cei viață limitare în sus, Doamne, odihnește sufletul la dormitului robitului Ioan. În locul minat, în locul verdeasă, în unde odihnă, de unde a fugit durerea, întristare și susțină. Toate câte a greșit el în această viață, cu cuvântul, cu fapta sau cu gândul, ca un Dumnezeu bun și iubitor de oameni, Dumnezeu iartă. Nu este om care să trăiască, să nu greșească, numai tu singur ești fără de păcat. Dreptatea ta este dreptate în prea cuvântul și adevărul Domnului să ne rugăm. Doamne, miluiește! Mare să numele Prea Sfintei Trăi! Mare să numele Prea Sfintei Trăi! Mare să numele Sfintei Trăi!
And so on. This is the tradition in Romania, and this is how we deal with the funeral sector. So if you have any question, please, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Catalin.
Yes. Usually, when you start a funeral business, first question you ask if you have a place where to install the Remembrance Room for making your own kitchen, your own meat, because any other way you don't earn money. So of course I have my own kitchen.
He's got full-time 4 employees.
Yeah, and I have 5 employees. I don't have the picture now. The 5 employees salute you all. And that's the fact in Romania.
Okay, thank you very much, Kathleen.
Thank you all.
I will ask Paulo and Jordi to make it a little bit shorter, if you can manage. Please, Paulo.
Well, thank you. Talking about our reality in Portugal, we are a very conservative, religious country, so actually the church has the monopoly of the viewing facilities. All funerals goes to the church to be viewing there. And it became stagnated without any evolution for the decades. And what I want to say is when you want to do some innovation and do some differentiation on the service, depends on the funeral homes, not only in the society. Because the society also, they can grow, evolve if the funerals, economic agents propose new solutions. 10 years ago, I remember I was told that cremation would be impossible to be happen in Portugal. Impossible. Nobody will accept cremation. Today you have 25 crematoriums and 20% of the people choose the cremation because there was someone start to invest on that. So don't wait for people asking for. And for what was talking about online funeral homes, that is going to be a reality. You must adapt on that. Actually, we believe that tradition and innovation and rules can live together. As you can see, we still have traditional on doing funerals on foot. We go since the chapel to the cemetery. It takes 30 minutes or 40 minutes walking or 1 hour. It takes all morning doing the funeral for that family. The family does know that is not paying so well the cost that we are. The funeral home is an exclusive service for them for all day, okay? Or we have the traditional mausoleums that we call jazigos that we place there, the coffins, and you can touch the coffins. And we also do all our vigils, we do with the open coffin. Everybody can touch the body. These are some examples when I do on-foot funeral services in cities. Oh, it's there, not here. In cities. So not in rural, just on rural areas, but also in the very big cities, everybody goes following the cars. But you can do also some services like you have there a band playing some music following all the services, because in some places we are celebrating the life and not the death. These are some examples of the mausoleum that I was talking about. You can see the coffins inside. Actually, it was an adaptation of the church to the cemeteries. They took the chapels inside of the cemetery when the cemetery becomes an obligation. So there are small churches inside of the cemetery. And that you can see, you have there the viewing facility, and everybody can go around it. Actually, as Guillaume was saying, we do everything in 24 hours. In 24 to 36, the funeral is done. Since the date and the hour that the person has died. If someone dies today, the family calls the funeral home today. You're going to the vigil room today, and the funeral is tomorrow. So it's a very strong logistical system, and also very stressing for the family that needs to live with all that pressure to make some decisions when someone just has happened to die. So the funeral directors have the responsibility to follow. This is some of the image that now we are following, do some different preparations to different families that want to celebrate in the different ways, and is resulting a lot. In our country, as the funeral is private, funeral homes are all private operators, we have some social responsibility. So we have some rules and to follow. For example, we are forced to have a social funeral, social service for the cost of 400 euros. And nobody can deny. We have, and does not depend on how much healthy or not healthy is the person. Everybody has the right to ask for social services, and all funeral homes are obliged to serve the family. So we have obliged to have also a qualified person. He has to have a certificate to operate as a funeral director in the country. Can also do the thanatopraxis, also that is coming more and more practice, and you must have special conditions to do that kind of services. So, this is some kind of service that we are organizing in the country, taking into account the new demandings of our families. As you see that we cannot deny that the future is now becoming, there's a lot of changings coming very fast, and we are supporting want to change, propose new regulations inherent to the funeral activity. We believe that more and more funerals are going to become ecological in the point of view, the usage of the coffins. Now we have a very strong standard of coffins to be cremated and inhumated. You don't need to change it. You can use the same, because it's people are very concerned about the ecological issues. The publication of the new standard 15017 is going to be a fact next year. And of course the digital services, they are there already. Now you have part of the service that you can buy online, but I believe that very fast you're going to be to buy all the services online. And the standard 15017 can be a guarantee when you are selling us online services. You can show to your client that you are not the same as the other online, because online you cannot look, you cannot see faces. So you must support on technical things and quality guarantee. And the standard 15017 is something that we can support on. You have something that the new 15017 is going to show us something like you forced to take care of the wishes of the deceased and the family. You will need to I'm lost in the. You will need to give to the family all the detail. Because still in this year you cannot find everybody, don't do that. You must have all detailed services to the client. They must approve and approve the service that you are going to provide. And also, of course, the education, some programs, training programs that a certified company is obliged to do And if a family goes to a funeral home that is already certified from 15 or 17, it's guaranteed that those persons are being trained in the special training program that is fixed. So those are all ideas and standards that we can follow and guarantee the quality of the service to the clients. These are some of the funeral view facilities that are becoming more and more useful, and the new standard will look for this kind of investment that funeral homes are doing, like in the thanatopraxy or the fleet or the physical material that you are prepared to use to remove the deceased from the place that he is for the visual rooms. Yeah, that's it. Well, it was very fast, but I think that...
Thank you, Paolo. Thank you to get this overview of Portugal. And now we'll let Jordi from Spain, that he will show us something very interesting regarding funeral homes in Spain. And please try to be synthetic. I know you have a nice presentation, but we are running on time.
Good evening. I think that on a specific aspect of good practice from the sector in Spain, as in other countries in Europe, as said Guillaume, that has profoundly affected the approach to the services or our way of working, has been the important development of the funeral homes called in Spain tanatorios. Many buildings have been constructed across the country, and as in 2018, there are 2,250 funeral homes. And in Spain, there are more than 8,000 municipalities, which means that there is one funeral home per every 3.4 municipalities. The total number of visitation rooms amount to more than 7,000. And given that there are about more than 1,100 deaths on average per day in Spain, there are 6.07 rooms per death and day. And maybe there are too many, we can think, but obviously they are not evenly distributed. Perhaps in some cities there are 3, and in other cities there are none. And as you know, the number of deaths is not linear throughout the year. These buildings can be of different sizes, with diverse programs, more or less completed. Ample and bright visitation rooms, they can have between 1 and 30, maybe more. Great capacity of multi-confessional and secular chapels, offices to assist families, diverse shops, coffee shops, florists, thanatopraxis rooms and other service rooms, in-house and external car park spaces, gardens, and sometimes also crematoriums. And all of this in a single place, which is more comfortable for the families and facilitates the operation of the companies. Funeral homes are one of the main differences found in the funerary offer, because it's during the wake that the company's personnel have more contact with the families, and families can have a great perception of the quality of the facilities. Looking a little bit at our history, the funeral homes started being built in Spain in the last century, the 70s. Until then, the deceased were veiled mainly at home. The first funeral home was the Sancho de Ávila one in Barcelona, opened in 1968, and it was a very large building located in a peripheral area. And at first it wasn't successful. The families didn't want to go. As you know, it's difficult to change the tradition. But over time, its use became widespread, in part because the prices of the visitation room were low, and also insurance companies included the use of funeral homes in their policies. Gradually, funeral companies have been building this type of facilities, and families have been appreciating them for their comfort. And at this time, the most funeral companies in Spain have their own funeral homes. Depending on the ownership of these buildings, they may be private, most of them, as in the Western Europe, or public, and directly managed through administrative concessions or directly managed by city councils. The visitation room, they are the key element of these buildings, because they consist of two differentiated spaces. And no, that's it to say, no? Yeah. A room for exhibition and having the wake of the deceased, in refrigerated glass boxes or chambers, both at maximum temperature of 4 degrees, and a room for the families to stay and receive visits. Sometimes they have also a private washroom and also a terrace from which natural light enters. Okay. More quickly. Here you can see an example of two visitation room. In the center you can see the room of the family. On the left, the room for viewing the deceased in a chamber or around the glass boxes. And also on the right, you can see the washroom. And in these buildings, the movement of families and visitors is separated from that of services, and the room is in the middle of the two corridors, away from the facade. So you need the patio or the mini courtyard to let in natural light. This is another typical visitation room, more simple in Spain. And now let's see some examples of funeral homes. This is the Tanatorio de Jove in Gijón. This building belongs to Funeraria Gijonesa. It was designed by AC Architects, and it was opened in 2015. With 5 visitation rooms, it has 2,800 square meters of floor space. This is the main facade. Another facade. This is the previous hall of the visitation rooms. Some details of the stairs. The lobby of the building. And this is a visitation room. In the foreground, the room for the family. At the back, the room for viewing the deceased through a window. And on the right, the patio for natural light. This is a big building in Barcelona, Tanatorio Ronda de Dalt, designed by Ribas and Ribas Architects. It was opened in 2006 with 20 visitation rooms and 2 chapels, and 12,000 square meters in 5 levels, 2 of them underground with a big car park. This is a side facade to a very slanted street, as you see. A view of the garden. The main facade from the garden. On the first and second floor are the visitation rooms with large terraces in front. This is the lobby of the building, in the ground floor. The previous halls of the visitation rooms with the terrace on the right. An entrance door to a visitation room, and on the left, an alcove with a table for the memorial book. Another visitation room. One of the two chapels, the largest, it seats 400. And this is Tanatorio de León. This is a very interesting funeral home because it's built underground, under Republic Square. Why? Because it is located in a residential area, and in Spain, people do not like to live next to funeral home. So the solution was to hide it under water cover. And it's a public building, obviously, managed in concession by Memora. It was opened in 2001, and it was designed by Jordi Badia and Josep Val architects, with 3,200 square meters, with 10 visitation rooms. The previous hall of the visitation room, and on the right, you can see how the difference in level is saved by a landscape slope. The chapel, not very big. And this is the Tanatorio de Viladecans. I think it's a building that stands out for its double facade. The exterior helps maintain the privacy of the building and acts as a sunscreen. There is also a crematorium inside, and I assure you that the architect made a great job hitting the chimney. A view of the previous hall. Another view, double space hall. Some details of the stairs. And this is a view of visitation room that communicate with the one next door using mobile panels and become a double room or a VIP room. Another visitation room, and sound absorbing materials have been used in walls and ceilings. And finally, this is the new Tanatorio Sancho Davila in Barcelona, managed by Memora. It has replaced the oldest in Spain, and it was built next to it. And it was opened last year. It's very, very new. There is also a very big building with 20 visitation rooms. And that's it. Thank you very much. Both of them. They are private or public, in cemeteries or in tanatorios, in the town also.
Thank you, Jordi.
Okay. I would like to say a couple of words about a very unique situation that has come about in Germany. And I promise you, I will be the shortest presentation. The German market is very, very traditional. And so it is very unique what the German Association has come up with. I think in many countries it's the same. The topic of death is not talked about. People talk about it when it's too late, more or less. So to start a campaign with something different was the idea behind this. And the Germans came up with a competition called My Coffin. They got in touch with some local celebrities that people know from television or radio or movies and so on, and paired them up with young, innovative artists. And the celebrities were allowed to design their own coffin. And this was all over Instagram with 100 million views. It's amazing for me. And we have a very short video to show you what they did.
I had a very hard time staring death in the face through the eyes of my mother.
You cannot change it. Death is impudent.
This is something that everyone has to face.
This is about breaking down inhibitions.
One of my favorite little titles there, and it will stay with me for a while, I want to share. The Instagrammers were talking about death between avocado toast and their selfies. And it's a really cool idea and very unique. And we wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, thank you. I think we can take a few questions, one or two questions. We have no... Can you bring the microphone? Est-ce que vous pouvez venir chercher le nom? Ok, merci. Désolé. Bring the microphone.
Bonjour. Alors, je voudrais juste poser deux petites questions concernant le rassemblement de tous les pays d'Europe comme ça.
Bonjour.
Alors, je voudrais juste poser.
Hi there. I'd like to just ask two questions about this gathering of all the countries in Europe that talks about this which has been announced as a project. Are you thinking about a meeting and having ways of communicating between you in order to discuss maybe and exchange practices and useful practice that might help other people who live elsewhere to think so that people can travel to go and die somewhere else, or information about death in Europe, because death is something that faces us all, it brings us together.
So EFFS, part of you said we are already done it. We have two kind of services. There is our website, it's EFFS.eu, that you can look at it. But after, you have to be member to get some information regarding the sector. Okay? So you can be individual members. We are really concerned regarding what we're going to put in the future regarding the business, and like, for example, what we've done, because I make a summary of the survey, but there is more, a little more, and so we will be also, you are welcome to join us, because more we are strong regarding what the issue regarding the European Commission and so on. Do you want to add something?
maybe after we're finished, you can come visit us over at the booth. It's G30 CPFM EFFS, and we'll have time to chat and answer any questions. Where are we? G37, I think, over there.